Hi, everybody.
Is it on?
Oh, yeah.
I know. I have to whisper for it to sound right. Oh, it's getting better. I think that's good. Is that good? Okay, great. Thank you very much back there. Okay, and I can't stand very close to that speaker, so I'm going to move over here. So hi, everybody. Welcome. Or that speaker. Right. So we're here today to have a discussion about new mathematics pathways and policy issues around that. And I want to mention to get started, this is going to be a conversation with Bernadine Chuck-Fong of the Carnegie Foundation and Uri Treisman of the Dana Foundation. And I want to let you know that Uri sends his regrets that he is unable to join us today. He actually had a death in his family, and that's why he's not here. But we have with us Jenna Cullinane and Amy Getz from the Dana Center. And so why don't we start by having each of you introduce yourselves, and then we'll go around and hear from folks that are in the room today, your name, the institution you're from, the role you play there, and particular interests you have that you'd like to learn about. And the way we'll structure our time together is I have a number of questions that I will ask of these folks here that they don't know yet, but to get them to talk about the pathways and the implications of new pathways. And then I want to open it up to you to ask questions as well. Jenna?
Good afternoon. Here we go. Thanks for coming to this late afternoon session. I'm Jenna Cullinane, and I'm at the Dana Center. I'm the Higher Education Policy and Strategy Lead, so I lead a lot of our work around transfer and applicability issues, college readiness, and some of the placement issues with the New Mathways project.
I'm Amy Getz. I'm the manager of Community College Services at the Charles A. Dana Center at the University of Texas at Austin. We get lectured all the time on saying the whole thing. So my job is to oversee all of our work in higher education and specifically in the New Mathways project.
Good afternoon. I'm Bernadine Chuck-Fong. I'm the Senior Managing Partner for the Carnegie Foundation for the Advancement of Teaching. We're located on the Stanford University campus in California near the Silicon Valley. And I was formerly a community college president at Foothill College in California, and I'm currently an ATD coach. And actually started with Uri the Carnegie Pathways, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and then where we started and where we are now, and some of the strategies about how and why we started that structure that related to some of the policies we'll talk about today.
Great, thank you. I forgot to introduce myself, by the way. I'm Karen Klippel, also at the Carnegie Foundation.
And so what are we supposed to say?
Say your name, your institution, your role there, and if there's something in particular that you'd like to learn today.
Okay. My name is Chris Quarles, and I'm from Everett Community College, where I'm a math instructor. And I guess I'd just like to see from your guys' point of view, kind of the big picture of where you see things are heading.
I'm Michael Carr from Mott Community College in Flint, Michigan, and I'm developmental math faculty. And I primarily work on non-STEM tracks for students, and so I'm kind of interested in politics of 2-year versus 4-year schools, and when are they going to start being more accepting of alternate tracks other than the traditional math kind of thing.
Mark Schwartz, Assistant Dean of STEM at Delaware County Community College outside of Philadelphia. Relatively new to my position, but I'm interested in learning just what the landscape is and what direction it's going to go.
I'm Heather Gingrich from College Spark, Washington. We're a funder of Achieving the Dream in Washington State, and I'm just interested in learning about the pathways.
April Garrison from St. Louis Community College.
Okay, we're all from St. Louis Community College here. My name is James Munden. I'm the math department chair. I as well am interested in the politics and the relationship between 2- and 4-year institutions and trying to form different pathways for developmental students.
I'm Teresa Heather of St. Louis Community College as well. I'm a math faculty member who's fully released to be the ATD core member of the core team, and have the same, we're all looking for the same thing. So nice to see you all. Thanks.
I'm Lena Williams. I'm from Tallahassee Community College, and I'm here just to see what the big picture is and what you guys have to say.
I'm Ben Ashenbrenner from Jefferson Community and Technical College in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm math faculty and just wanted to know how to do a better job in developmental math.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Roy Gwatnick. I've been a career math educator for over 25 years. I'm currently Associate Vice President for Student Success and Developmental Education at Broward College. And while we're developing alternative non-STEM tracks, I really feel like in Florida, the opportunity with state course numbering system for us to turn those traditional algebras into more brain-friendly, at least function-based, if not modeling-based, and want to get a sense from you why we just have stagnated there for so long, and whether there's really an opening now for us to move forward.
My name is Allison Heil from Athens Technical College in Athens, Georgia. I'm math faculty as well as our adjunct coordinator, and I'm trying to continually learn about, I've heard the Statways over the past few years and seeing how we can apply it to our institution and the issues that we have in our state as well. Athens Technical College.
My name is Larry Darledge. I'm president of Tarrant County College Northeast Campus, and we are working on a whole different, a lot of different pathways and try and find that silver bullet like everybody else. And we're going to be starting Mathways, so we're really interested in that.
I'm Archie Wilmer, also from Tarrant County College Northwest Campus. I'm an associate professor of mathematics there and just interested in what's being shared here.
Hello, I'm Alice Murillo, and I'm with Broward College. I'm the University College Dean and also supervise learning resources and tutorial support, also adjunct faculty in the department, the math department. I'm interested in seeing how we can position tutorial services in light of the legislation that has occurred in Florida with developmental ed, and how we can develop best practices to support the changes that are coming upon us real quickly.
Hi, I'm Valerie Cope. I'm with Sinclair Community College. I'm the Math Academy Coordinator, which is our Math Emporium style math. And I'm just always interested in listening to what people's ideas are and always thinking.
Hi, I'm Mark McFadden from Montgomery County Community College. I'm Associate Professor of Mathematics, and I'm just here to listen, see what's going on, and maybe pick something up.
I'm Lonnie Delaplane from Kauai Community College. I'm interested in learning about the alternate pathways, and Bernadine usually knows what she's talking about, so I'm excited to see what she has to say today.
I'm Jonathan Kalk. I'm the institutional researcher at Kauai Community College, and I'm just interested in anything new that you guys have to share about what's going on in math.
Good afternoon. My name is Alan Leibovitz, former faculty member, now current Associate Dean of Mathematics at Broward College in South Florida. I'm interested in learning about new non-STEM options, pathways to college-level math, and various math redesign initiatives, whether they're similar to ours or different, and see what people are working on and see what's working.
Hi, I'm Tom McCullough. I teach math at Pierce College in Washington State, and it's raining outside, so I thought maybe I'd come in here and be learning about math.
Bryce Humphreys with Yakima Valley Community College. I'm Dean for Basic Skills in a branch campus. I'm interested in what is going on at for the lowest level math, arithmetic, and pre-algebra.
My name is Lori Trumbo. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina, Greenville Technical College. I am actually a speech instructor who is released from almost all of our classes to run a math program. So people always like to remind me, you teach public speaking, right? And I'm like, there's no reason I can't reinvent myself, and that's what I've done. And so the more I learn, the better off I am.
Fantastic.
Hello, I'm Sharon Kamner at Pierce College in Washington State. I'm a math faculty member, and I'm hoping to get a sense of whether it's going to get easier to get redesigned pathways type things to go smoothly through the states and in the accrediting parts of that.
Hi, I'm Beth Bounce Johnson from Wallace State Community College in Hanceville, Alabama. And I'm really interested in any changes in developmental. We've been restructuring, changing. That's part of our initiative for Achieving the Dream. And so I just think it's good to be aware of what other schools are doing and how effective those measures actually are.
Michael Landstrom, Instructional Specialist in Mathematics, Cuyahoga Community College in Cleveland, Ohio.
I'm Kathy Davis. I'm the Director of Planning and Assessment at Indian River State College here in Florida. And like all the Florida schools, we're trying to figure out what might be positive out of our recent legislation, and also how that sets us apart from other states, what we can learn from the other states, but also now how our path has to differ from theirs. So,
what Kathy says. We work together. Tiffany Lewis, Indian River State College, Developmental Math.
I'm Paul Fouts. I'm the Division Director for Math, Science, and Physical Education at Temple College in Temple, Texas. And so I have a little idea what's going on in Texas right now, but anxious to learn what else is going on around the United States.
Good afternoon. I'm Terry Martin. I am an instructor of math at Elgin Community College, and again, just interested in what's going on.
I'm Nicole Gray, and I teach math at Foothill College in California. And I worked with Carnegie on the Pathways projects.
We're here to talk about pathways. Why don't we start with what exactly are pathways? I think people have a lot of different ideas when they hear that phrase. And I'm hoping that you could start by just explaining to us, what do you mean when you talk about the pathways?
So maybe I could give a little history, because the history of the Carnegie Pathways and Mathway at Dana Center is the same. And that starts with Uri Treisman and Tony Breich, who's the president of the Carnegie Foundation. When Tony became president, he really wanted to look for a high leverage problem that he could use the resources and the name and the branding, as it were, of the Carnegie Foundation to really address. He brought in Uri Treisman as part of a team, and as well as myself and some others, to really look at this issue. And Uri was able to really lay out, if you would, some of the architecture that actually is undergirding both of these pathways. One of the first things is that we were looking at, how do we close the gate? In other words, right now, what happens is that we have evidence through CCRC, Community College Resource Center, that indicated that actually community colleges lose more students between courses rather than within a course. So they may finish a course, but then they don't enroll in the next course. So how do we try to eliminate that and really have students think about pathways rather than individual courses? And even though we know we operate and offer courses and sequences like Algebra 1, Algebra 2, et cetera, that the fact of the matter is that the students might even complete a course but then not continue on to the next course. So how do we eliminate that kind of structure? So that was one goal. The other goal was that the students that are in the traditional math curriculum, that they are learning the amount of math that a math major, an engineering major, someone who is going into the sciences, that they would need to know. And there are all those other students, for example, in the social sciences, liberal arts, humanities, technical programs, and they're in that same track, but that is more math than, frankly, they need to have for their major. So the other concept was, let's really reconceptualize the curriculum to get into what are the essential math concepts and math knowledge that students need to have to go into various fields, not just the field of engineering and or mathematics. So that was another part of it. And I would say that in any of these pathways that we're talking about or representing here, we're not talking about a redesign. To me, redesign means you just kind of move things around. What you used to do first, now you do second or whatever it is. We're not talking about necessarily acceleration, because that's taking the same amount of material and just doing it faster, or compression, which is the same idea. We're really talking about reconceptualization. So taking what it is that we think is important in the students' knowledge about mathematics, and that's what they should have. So having said that, that's not something that the Dana Center or Carnegie Foundation by themselves felt they were equipped to do. So we brought together a group of math experts. So these were faculty members from universities, from math societies, the professional societies, to help us determine what are the learning outcomes. You had a couple of questions around the room about articulation. Obviously, articulation was also in the back of our minds to say if we have outcomes that are developed and sanctioned by these math societies, these representatives from the universities, that would be something we could put forth to those universities for articulation purposes, but also to any other individuals so that they can understand that this is still a rigorous curriculum, this is a rigorous alternative, this is not just a watered down version of what is the traditional math curriculum. So that's some of the background, and also that's how the idea of the pathway and even the term came about. And I know that if you've been to any of these sessions for Mathway or Quantway or Statway, that you've seen that kind of structuring going on, that we're really trying to get students to see what is their endpoint, that's the pathway, and then they take the developmental end, the developmental level student then goes into that pathway and ends up with some kind of college level transferable course, if it's a transferable course, or certainly with a credential going into a technical or career program.
So that was an excellent description, and that those two key components, if I had to, just boil it down to what's absolutely essential in our definition, it's that idea of acceleration and the content aligned to programs of study. Some of the things that we really try to highlight, because we feel like it's what gets lost, is the concept that this is not just about changing developmental mathematics, that this is a connection of developmental mathematics to gateway courses, and then gateway courses to degrees and certificates. So we also talk a lot about the goal isn't success in developmental math. The goal isn't even really just success in the gateway math. The goal is completion. And that means that we're talking about systemic change. And that also connects this concept of pathways to a lot of larger issues that colleges are grappling with, things about developing programs of study, meta majors, some of the, the work in Florida, the legislative work in Florida around meta majors falls into that. Issues that then go into issues of transfer, also thinking about placement, so that there are connections beyond this that are much larger than just thinking about what you do to change a developmental or a gateway course.
And I would just add, that was where I was going to head with pathways. Pathways describe many things. That word is used in a variety of ways. I think I've heard the term structured pathways used quite a bit, and I think that is often synonymous with the idea of meta major. I think that pathways is also used to describe the transition or work around the high school to college transition, and what does that pathway look like. And I know particular initiatives have that word in their name. So when we think about, there are many, many pathways, but what we're talking about really is the kind of year-long experience, moving students who are underprepared to and through their gateway course, but lots of implications and ties, of course, to ultimate completion and where students have come from the transition from high school.
So Jenna, while you're on that, tell us about how the pathways differs from the traditional approach that students go through, and what the implications are to colleges or at the system level for that. What are the policy implications of the differences?
So the big policy issues, I think, primarily are around transfer, articulation, applicability, also some issues around designating students as college ready. When do they become college ready if they're in different kinds of courses, and placement are kind of the three biggies that I hear a lot about and we think a lot about. The first one around transfer and articulation and applicability, I think both projects have done quite a bit of work to make sure that the college level courses that these pathways are anchored in are acceptable for transfer, that they meet the learning outcomes. In Texas, for instance, these courses are anchored in the standard learning outcomes, and they're part of the guaranteed courses that are guaranteed for transfer. But where the real issue is around what we call applicability. Applicability refers to, okay, if you took that statistics course and you transferred to a four-year institution and you're a nursing student, at your first institution, maybe nursing had a statistics requirement, so you went ahead and took the Statway and you finished your statistics requirement. But then you move to another institution and they require college algebra. So it's the ironing out of the math requirements at the level of programs of study, and this is where it really links to sort of the structured pathways, meta majors, thinking about clear and coherent pathways that are organized around the major and what is the right math for those students. So we've been doing a lot of work, and I can talk a little bit more about that later on, around how we're doing more outreach to four-year universities to go ahead and improve the alignment around math requirements. The other implications are around placement. In Texas, for instance, we've moved to a common placement. Both projects are really organized for students who come in around the beginning algebra level, typically 2 levels down. But as placements change, as placement cut scores change, there's a lot of movement going on right now, and figuring out where to best place students, especially in light of placement tests that are heavily algebra-based. What can be learned from this? Bernadine, I'd love for you to share a little bit about what you said earlier about seeing placement and how successful students have been sort of across a range of placement scores. And the other is college readiness. I think when students are coming through a pathway where they don't necessarily go through intermediate algebra, when students kind of get the check mark that they're college ready and able to go on to college level courses, there are some questions and concerns about that. So we've seen other states in Kentucky and Colorado where they maybe have different placement or different levels for students becoming complete or college ready. This policy is changing in Texas and in other places. So these are some of the areas of policy work that this is starting to push on. And I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think we've learned a lot in this process, that it is possible to implement pathways, but there's a lot of things you need to be thinking about to bring it all together.
I just want to enlarge a little bit on that issue of college readiness, because then that also connects back to our K-12, and so there's connections to Common Core for the Common Core states and for state standards. And this concept that maybe college readiness isn't a single cut score, and that there might be college readiness based on your pathway, that if you're going into a college algebra or pre-calculus, that might be a different type of college readiness than if you're going into a quantitative reasoning course. These are things we are just beginning to grapple with, and there are a lot of questions of, well, what does college readiness mean if you're talking about going into statistics or quantitative reasoning? And the field does not have an answer for that yet, although it's something that I hope we'll see some of our mathematical professional associations start to take on and really think about more deeply.
So the elephant in the room, and Jenna alluded to it, but I'm going to just say it, the elephant in the room is intermediate algebra, and whether or not students are required to take it to go on to, whether it's math or any other program, or transfer or graduate. And to be honest with you, when we first started, and when I say we, this is the collective we, this is with the Dana Center and Carnegie, that excuse me, Barry and I purposely did not talk about intermediate algebra. And we did not say with these pathways that students are not taking intermediate algebra. Clearly it was implied, but we did not want to get up on some, frankly, university radar screens about intermediate algebra. The reason I'm saying this publicly now is because we have gotten the buy-in of many universities. In fact, universities have also adopted the pathways themselves because they finally recognized that they have some of the very students that we have in the community colleges. So now we can put it on the table. And in fact, just recently, and we can share those publications with you, that there are now publications from all of the math societies and even the most conservative one, saying that it's really time to look at math education, look at it differently, and that there are alternative pathways for students depending upon what their goals are. This is a huge change that's just happened in 3 years. And I have to say that one of the things to also keep in mind is in Florida, for example, we have a program in Tallahassee, we have a program in Sinclair, in Ohio. In Connecticut, it started in Connecticut, and then I know it went to Florida, it's probably going to go somewhere else, and the legislatures are getting enlightened in their minds about what's happening about developmental education. Now, if you're a legislator, you think there's billions of dollars across the country being spent on developmental education, and the needle hasn't moved a whole lot. The problem still looks about the same. So if I'm a legislator, especially if it's a tight budget time, and I'm looking for a cut, I'm going to say, I'm going to cut the funding to developmental education because there hasn't been much change in the success rates, so we won't really see a difference. I mean, that's a really harsh way to put it, but that's really the kind of thinking that's going on in the legislative cycle. So we need to be prepared for that, and we need to be able to prepare for how do we talk about students who are needing developmental programs and supports, but maybe seeing it from a more positive light. So we talk about at Carnegie, and I think Dana Center probably is doing it something somewhat similar, is, or you can just say what we were saying, it's fine, which is that we have college level programs for developmental math students. It's not developmental math programs. And I think there's a very important distinction there, because if the goal is in these pathways that students end up with college level credit, these are college level courses for developmental math students. That's very different than saying we've got these developmental math programs, which frankly, as you know, these states all talk to one another. And so I do think that we need collectively, everyone here in the room and elsewhere, we need to be kind of ahead of the game and thinking ahead of the policymakers so that they don't catch us in a situation where we're reacting. We want to be proactive. Now that we have data, we have really good, solid data of student success in the pathways that we're talking about. This is our second year of implementation for Carnegie. Then now we're able to come up front and say this is what we are doing, and we know that it works. We have data that show that students go on after our pathways to successive courses, that their grades in those courses are better than the grades of students going through the more traditional pathways. So now that we have evidence, we're now more willing to come out in the open and really begin to have the discussion more publicly. But the fact that the math societies have come along too is really a big deal. That also then goes to articulation. Because when we started with articulation, we have articulation agreements now in Washington, Minnesota, Washington, Minnesota, California. We hope to get Ohio's, and then we have some in Florida, Connecticut, and we have Texas is renumbering its courses, so we're figuring out how to sort that out. But the point is that what also is happening is you've got the legislatures looking at each other and saying, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, but we need to give them some positive examples of success, so that they begin to see more positively what the community colleges are doing, and it's not a sinkhole of money going in and students not getting the success numbers that they should be getting. The other thing is that now we have, as we're all working together, that we start talking state to state. So frankly, when the California State University came in with, we're going to accept, in this case it was Statway, we're going to accept Statway for transfer, then when we started talking to Washington State, we said, well, California is doing this, would you like to do this? And so Washington came on board, and so now we're talking to Minnesota. Minnesota actually came on board in a big way because they actually accept Statway for their junior level transfer. And so now we're talking to other states. So the whole point is, you parlay one state with another or one university with another so that they begin to see that, there's a train moving down the track here, and do they want to get on the train or not?
Excellent. So my next question is, the pathways that you've described is pretty different from the traditional approach. And what I'm wondering is, what do you say to advisors that are reluctant to advise against the norm, into something new?
So one of the things that I think is really important in working with advisors and with any faculty and staff who are involved in this is to bring them in on the beginning of the conversation, which is the data. Because if I'm just looking at the courses on paper and I'm seeing college algebra as goes to anything, accepted by everything, then of course I'm going to think college algebra is what is best for students. But if I then see the data that shows me that even though it looks like an open door, it's actually a closed door for the majority of students, then that helps me understand the reason behind the Pathways model. And that's where I think we as a field, as educators, sometimes we fail, is we think, well, advisors just need to know what the courses are and what the prerequisites are, and we just need to give them that information and give them their little checklist, and they'll just follow what the checklist says. But no, these are professionals. These are people who care deeply about their students and their students' success, and they are not just about filling out the schedule, sitting there with the student. They want that student to succeed and have opportunities in the future. So they need to understand the reason behind it. And that's how you bring them on board so that they get the full picture of why this is important. And then secondly, I think you have to you need to develop with them the tools that will make this simple in their processes. The advisors need simple processes, the students need simple processes, because we know that craziness of advising, it's registration. If you have to think about 6 different options, and well, in this case you're going to put them here, that just gets too difficult in most of our systems. Most of our systems can't support that kind of complexity. So making it, giving them ways to communicate it clearly and quickly with students, and also making the pathway the default, the pathway, the appropriate pathway, the default. We talk a lot about that if you say, all right, for a journalism major, you could take any of these 3 courses, and they all seem to be equal, then people are going to default to what is familiar, what they've heard of before. Students will default to college algebra. It has the word college in it. It must be the right math. I'm a college student now. So, but if the default is quantitative reasoning, highly recommended, oh yeah, in smaller print we'll also allow these others, then that becomes the more normative pathway. So thinking about how we message these things is also part of the process. It's not just, oh, well, we knew they could have taken all 3 all along, but we never gave that message to them that actually this is the pathway that would probably make you the most successful, and also, hopefully, from the mathematician side of me, give you the best mathematics preparation that will be useful to you in your future.
The other 2 areas that I would suggest is not only the data on the front end about what's not working, but as you have ongoing success data to continue to share that. I think that one of the big concerns we heard about was this is a brand new program. Even if I'm willing to think of something beyond college algebra or feel comfortable, it's just so early. So there's the trepidation. Advisors are very risk averse. They don't want to hurt students in some way by referring them to a pathway that's not going to serve them well. So there is a ramp up time of continuing to engage advisors, not just this is what we want, but bring them into the process of this is our evaluation data, this is what students are talking about coming out of these courses, give them some of the qualitative reasons why these courses can be really successful and even transformative, I dare say, for some students who have really struggled in mathematics. The other side of it is I think that especially quantitative reasoning courses, many institutions and or many advisors have not had a lot of experience with courses called quantitative reasoning, and they often just don't know much about it. I think that that's an area for kind of ongoing professional learning, because advisors may not have been exposed to a wide variety of math courses, introductory math courses, and they may just be new to your institution. So that's another area that I've seen for additional work.
And along those lines, especially since Paul is sitting in the back, at Temple College, one of the things they did is they invited their advisors in, and they had them engage in a lesson from the course. So suddenly this becomes much more real to an advisor, and they start to understand both why would this be good for students, why is this exciting, and now they become part of the advocacy for the project. So thinking about some of those things, I mean, many of us probably would never think about teaching a math lesson with the advisors or other groups on your campus, but that's a wonderful way to develop advocacies.
To Jenna's point about understanding the success of the pathways, I'm wondering if you all could share what evidence we have of the effectiveness of pathways.
So I was going to talk about advisors, but I'll now talk about
Well, you can talk about both, Bernadine.
What's really, really important is to show, and I want to go back to the legislators, because we're talking about really what are the policy issues and implications. And so we really need to get into what can we do to impact what policies are being written or thought of. And so one of the ways, obviously, is with data, that to show student success rates, but they need to be significant. They need to be something that you're doing through your whole institution. I was just at a coaches meeting this morning, so all of you, when you meet with your ATD coach, and the next time around, I can tell you what you're going to hear. You're going to hear about pathways, and you're also going to hear about scaling, that it's no more of this piloting, you know, a little at a time, and we're going to do one class. We're looking for, Achieving the Dream, we're looking for scaling, and because we know what works. And it's really for the colleges to adopt a scale mentality and not a pilot mentality. Most pilots don't scale. And so you have to get out of that mentality to think about what's going to work. And Amy talked about the default, and that's a version of scaling. So I think that's going to be really, really very important. And so in terms of data, is how do you convince your faculty, how do you convince your college, how do you convince your board, how do you convince your state? It really has to do with data that you can show that certain activities, certain approaches make a significant difference, because that's what you're looking for. Most of your mathematicians in this room, so you know what a significant difference is. And that's what we're really talking about. A small difference really isn't enough. Incremental change really isn't enough. And as I said, I really urge all of us that we need to stay ahead of the game. Right now, I talked to one state. That state is not in this room, and I still won't mention it, but one state, they were talking about, well, we need to have, this is the system office, we need to have classes, what do they say? They have to be categorized as either general courses, which is non-college level, and then they have to have other courses that are general education, those are the college level. And there's this solid line between those two. Well, if you're looking at a pathway isn't going to fit this kind of bifurcation. And we need to begin to make that known. And we do think that with the Carnegie Foundation, the Dana Center, and being more public now about our work, that we're going to make that more known to various states. So the way that they're trying to, if you would, pigeonhole all of our course classifications is really not going to be effective in the long run. They're after the wrong thing. And so data are really, really important. Outcomes are really, really important. I know that Mathways has just started, so they don't have the outcomes yet, but I'm sure that they will soon. I don't expect they're going to be that much different than what we're finding, but we've been able to triple the success rate of developmental math students completing a college level course. That's huge. So in 1 year, normally it's 5%, and then 45% in 2 years, and what we're doing is 50% in 1 year. But what's even more important is we looked at, okay, you've got this 50% success rate, there's another 50% to go, but at the same time, with the 50% that are successful, what did they look like? Who were those students? And we had positive effects, whether they were African American, Latino, or white, and for African American students in particular, it was 4 times their success rate. So that's the kind of thing you want to put out there publicly. You want the legislators and all those folks to kind of hear about, think about, so that it's really what can community colleges do with good data, with good results to be proactive.
Yeah, and I think you meant to say 15% in the second year.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
Okay. No, sorry, go ahead, Amy.
So as Bernadine mentioned, the New Mathways project has not completed a full year yet, so we only have very early preliminary data from the first semester going into the second semester. So the baseline for the 9 colleges in Texas that were using this, the baseline was that for students starting 2 levels below developmental or below college ready, in 2 years, 9% of them enrolled in a college level course. So right now, since we're only halfway through the year, we're just looking at the comparison for how many went on to enroll. So we had the baseline is 9%. And in our first semester, in the 1 year, we have 55% enrolling. So we have a significant change, although again, it's never good enough. We always want to continue to make it better, but it's certainly encouraging. And I would say that there are other projects out there that have data that also supports the Pathways model. The California Acceleration Project has wonderful data that of colleges in a statistics pathway that significantly increasing persistence and completion of a college level course. Is there other data you would add to that?
Sure.
And let me just mention Florida, because Florida's, what happened to in Florida happened to Connecticut a few years before that. And that was eliminating developmental math or limiting students to the number of developmental classes that they could take. And I think that's also what's happening in Texas. And I would just say, don't let that freak you out. Because if you really look at how you're going to reconceptualize your curriculum, that do it in a way that you can best serve the students, and look at evidence now that is appearing that can really help you think about, we're talking about really college level work for students. What we're finding as well is that the students, it isn't that the students can't learn, it's just that the conditions under which we have been imposing upon them, frankly, are probably what the obstacles are. And if you remove some of those obstacles, that we're finding that's what's creating the success rate. Question over here.
Bernadine, when you said APDs is all going to be about scale and you know what works, it really scared me because my college 5 years ago went off in this, and they said, what's working? And it came back to something that lowered or poor developmental math rates to now 25-30%. So it's like, how does an institution look at stuff in other places and say, boy, that's working, let's run with that. And, you know, I appreciate that, you know, Carnegie feels confident about their data and Pathways in California, whatever, but.
Very, very good question. One of the things that we all want to think about, I was in community colleges for 36 years. What we all want to think about is community colleges, frankly, have ADD. You know, you come to a conference here, you're going to hear about Mathways, you're going to go home and, okay, it's ADD, not ATD, thank you, to make sure. You're going to come here, you're going to say, oh, we're going to go home and do this. And then you go to the next conference, you go to a MATIC, and then there's something else going on over there, and then you want to do that. Or some of your faculty are going to do this, and some of your faculty are going to do that. And you think about this, I always like to use this healthcare analogy. You need an appendectomy. And you would hope that if you go to a board-certified surgeon, you're going to come out with the same treatment and hopefully the same result. We have our students coming in to take math, and you know, I have maybe my version of how I'm going to perform the surgery, and Amy has her version about how she's going to do it, and Jenna may decide you don't need surgery at all. Well, I don't think we really want to convey that same kind of effect on our students, but that's in fact what we do. So to your question, what we think is really, really, really important, because what we're talking about here is, you know, we're mucking around with the curriculum, the classroom, faculty work, this is quote unquote sacred ground, and at the same time, what we are seeing is that faculty across the country, they know this is a problem. It's a shared problem. So let's come up with shared experiences. Let's come up with some kind of collective strategies. It doesn't mean everybody does the same thing. It means, though, that let's look at some collective strategies that we can work on or we can work together. One of the beauties of being in Achieving the Dream is because you do have a network and that you can begin to look at what each is doing. But go back to what Achieving the Dream keeps saying to all of us and to you. And that is, what's your evidence? In other words, why are students not doing well in your various programs? What's the evidence for that? And then, do you have a solution that addresses the source of that problem or that evidence? It may be different. I mean, a very mundane kind of example is, I know of one situation where the coach was reporting that part of the problem in this college was that students weren't getting to class on time, and so that was obviously causing huge attendance problems and everything else. Well, the bus schedule and the class schedule wasn't coordinated, and most of the students came on the bus. Well, if you don't know that, and you're trying to solve it by putting in a tutorial center, you still haven't solved your problem. So you really need to get, and this is what Achieving the Dream is trying to get you to think about. Make sure you understand. So yes, your students are not doing well in math, but you need to understand what is it that is it inappropriate advising? Is it they got misplaced? I mean, we can tell you the evidence that we have so far is that even though we designed these different courses for students who are 2 levels below, we have evidence now over 2 years that students, whether they're 1 level, 2 levels, or 3 levels below, we can't tell a whole lot of difference. And remember, every college already determines who's eligible for elementary algebra. That's already different, right? You've got a different placements test that you use over here, you've got a different one over here, and then you've got different cut scores even if you use the same placement test, so we're all over the map anyway. I don't know if that answered your question, but I think it's really understanding what the problem is at your campus and then getting all of your faculty on board, to understand what that is.
And I think that it's not so much about going out and seeing the great exciting success stories of other institutions, but understanding your college. I feel like that was the mistake that was made 5 years ago, is not really understanding what went wrong, but coming up with some exciting solution and then trying to do it. Turn out to be a practice solution.
The other issue that I think comes up sometimes is that the conditions under which one institution is really successful with an innovation may be just really different. And so is it special grant funds? Is it special technical assistance that they had? Is it a magnanimous leader who happened to be the math chair? And so, they went in this direction. So I think thinking through some of those issues are really important as you think about scaling it to different places. But something that I'm really encouraged about, and I don't believe that this is like the flavor of the month type intervention, because I see it coming from a lot of different places. You have the Carnegie Foundation, you have the Dana Center. We're implementing in many, many colleges. So you're going to see a variety. In Texas, for instance, we've got small rural colleges, we've got large urban colleges. We've really purposely tried to put this in many different settings so that they're kind of examples for how you might get this done. Another place that I'm encouraged is that the math professional societies have moved in this direction, maybe not at the developmental level, but at the college level. This idea of diversifying and aligning math is core to what the math professional societies are saying. And then if you look at the developmental level, encourage there as well. Another thing we're seeing is as we go out to four-year universities, we've been doing really concerted work in the state of Texas. We have 17 universities who have agreed to engage with the New Mathways project as transfer champions. And what they're doing is partnering with their two-year institution to just share information about their math requirements. And what we're finding is community colleges have been very concerned, this is never going to transfer, or we're going to have a lot of issues with our university up the street. But really, we've been very encouraged that many universities have already moved to a multiple pathways. They don't call it multiple pathways, and they may or may not be thinking of it for their dev ed population, if they have a big dev ed population. But at the college level, many institutions are moving away from a college algebra, and in many cases, taking college algebra out, because what they say is, well, if you need college algebra, you actually need a lot more math, and you're going to go on and take other math courses. College algebra should never be your terminal math course. If that's the case, you should be in a statistics or quantitative reasoning aligned to your social science or your liberal arts type program. So I feel like this is an idea whose time has come, and we're seeing evidence in lots of different places that this is the movement in the math community. And it is also a movement in the developmental math community for thinking about how we better support our students.
Jonathan and Lori, you want to share what you did in Kauai? Because this is also, I think, an answer to your question about what you found out and the data that you used, and then how you actually did do a whole reconceptualization of your curriculum.
Yeah, so Lonnie's our math faculty member here, and I'm our institutional researcher. We found, we have a lot of the same issues that everyone has about students not making it through the developmental pathway to college math. We decided to try a solution of acceleration, of combining our two elementary and intermediate algebra courses with each other into a single 5-credit course. And prior to the implementation, we had about 19% of students passing a college level course eventually from those who started in the elementary algebra. Now with the accelerated course, we have 36% of students who begin passing. So we've made some big improvements, but still, I think, still more work to be done. Right, so the old sequence, contained 3 levels: a pre-algebra, elementary algebra, and intermediate algebra. And the new sequence now would have pre-algebra and then this single accelerated algebra course, and then college level math. Yes. Yeah, so we actually broke down each level of the pipeline, how many students pass this class, and then of those, how many take the next class, of those, how many pass it, and so on, all the way up through the college level. And then you can see, maybe where your strengths and weaknesses were. And we found for our elementary algebra class, the success rate, it was like 57%, which isn't great. I know it's better than some, worse than others around the country. It's not a ridiculously low pass rate, I think, compared to others. So we could have decided, to focus an intervention there. But when you look at the fact that all the rest of those numbers are like around 75%, keep making it to the next levels, and then you multiply those all out, that's how you get your 19%. And realizing that even improving that 57% is not going to make a huge difference in the final number. What we're really doing is we're losing them along the way. And so that's what caused us to pick an acceleration-based solution, because you can just see structurally that even if our success rate in the original course was going to be much lower, we would end up with more students at the end of the pipeline, just because of the fact that we're not losing them along the way. So you're serving students better anyway. We actually found that the success rate in the accelerated course is higher than the success rate was in the original 3-credit course, and we have a bunch of reasons why. We just actually did a presentation in the last section on why. So I don't know if you want to say a couple of the reasons. Oh, it was two 3-credit classes in successive semesters. That's right.
And our PowerPoint is available on the app and probably on the website if you want to look at that. Another thing that we've just started doing, and this is after the acceleration and kind of separate, is we have started a class that is for the non-STEM path. And this is in response to a few policies that came from our system. One of them being that our trades students are now required to take a college level math class. And we said they don't need college algebra. Right now, they don't even have a college level math class requirement, but in the future they need one. And probably college algebra is not going to be very helpful for their career if they're going to be an auto mechanic or something like that. College algebra is not great. So we are deciding to send those students primarily through our survey of math class. And so for that, we needed to develop a new pathway. You know, we have just finished with this accelerated pathway, which we're really excited about, but it's focused on students that are going to college algebra. And I really agree with what you said, that college algebra should never be a terminal course. It's for STEM majors that are going on. There is much richer math that we can teach these students that aren't going into STEM. And so our new course, we're just in the first semester of offering our alternate pathway. And we're accepting students into that course that test 2 levels below. So that would test in the old traditional elementary algebra. And that course content contains pretty much linear equations, stuff like that, very basic algebra, but then much more focused on problem solving and math literacy and reading charts and graph, interpreting numbers, stuff like that. 3 credits. But we are just trying it out this semester with 1 course, and we realize that it might need to be more than 3 credits, we're not sure. Also, we're just doing 1 alternate path because we're a small school, so we don't have the population to develop 3 or 4 alternate pathways.
Well, I think Bernadine, this illustrates one of the problems, which is just when they started talking, they talked about the success, right? And that's what people instinctively do when something works at their college, right? And you were careful to say, how did that link back to what you understood about the data? And so I'm thinking maybe with my college, the problem was not really understanding how this solution that we picked out of the papers that we read, and I'm using we, I wasn't there, so I can speak really critically, is, was not actually connected to what the problem was. And they didn't understand that. And so our excitement has got to be tempered in this APE, this practice of really being careful with the data and not just basing it on research about what's working in other places, but what is the problem and do you understand your evidence?
So this is where your IR comes in, and I know that you have different levels of IR help at different colleges, but it's either how astute your IR person is and or how you can help that individual help you in looking at what your data are. And so, for example, how many of you right now, let's go to the traditional, Algebra 1, Algebra 2 sequence. How many of you, and let's start before that, you've got a numeracy or an arithmetic course or something, right? How many of you know right now that what is the success rate, not of finishing in the course, of let's say arithmetic and going into Algebra 1, but what is the success rate of the students who go from arithmetic to Algebra 1 to Algebra 2 and then on to a college level course? Do you know what that is? I know Nicole should know. So say more. And I'm cheating because I was at the on that.
Well, so we actually redesigned, in the math department at Foothill College, we had a researcher come to us in, I want to say it was like 2004 or 3, and say, I have good news for you. Your grades mean something. They put students into buckets effectively, but the bad news is those might not be the buckets that you want to put them into. So if a student got an A in a math course, they had a good chance of going on and passing the next course, about 80%. If they got a B in one of our courses, they only had a 50-50 chance of going on and passing the next course. And if they got a C in a math course, they had almost no chance. It was like between, I don't even think it was that high. I think it was like 5 to 10. I think 17 was the English classes because they had similar buckets. So we actually redesigned our arithmetic and pre-algebra, combined them into one course and made it mastery based, and then we actually teach it as a program. All of the courses run at the same time. We move the students around to different classes so that students working on the same material can be in similar classes, and they have to get through a certain amount it has 2 course numbers associated with it. If they get through the whole thing in 1 quarter, they get a pass and get to go on to the next. Otherwise, we don't lose their performance. So in other words, if they only get through the first 3 modules, they can come back to us and retake the course, but start off where they left off. And each exam is cumulative for the whole thing, so they really come out, all of them, with A-level knowledge. So we have about 20% now who go all the way through. At least in the state of California, if a student gets a C in a course, they can't retake that course. But now they're stuck because they don't actually have the knowledge that they need to go on. And so a C ends up being about the worst grade they can get. We've basically, yeah, exactly. We've basically stamped, you are now stuck forever.
So going back to some of Ben's questions and the point that Bernadine is trying to make about understanding your data, one of the things that sort of accidentally happened in our work is that we had intended to have some colleges work with us very deeply, and we had an application process for that. And we were, we didn't want to make this big onerous application process, so we wanted to make it something they could do easily but would still be informative to us to really be able to assess their readiness. And so we decided to have it set up so that there would be some key questions that different people had to answer, so that they had to have answers from their developmental and academic math faculty if they were split or together, that they had to have some information from their IR, and they had to have things from advising. And what we saw and have learned from since then is in that process, we were able to predict really well who was going to really be prepared for implementation, because you could tell by the way they answered the questions who was bought in and who was informed. And the places that had that really good buy-in and in sharing of information and understanding across all of those levels really got a running start. And the places where it was kind of obvious that there was maybe one group kind of pushing this, they had some very predictable stumbling blocks. And this, I'm using this as an example to stepping back to this point about the planning that you go into before you make a decision to implement something. And for those of you who have been in some sessions with me, you're going to think this is all I talk about now, because it's the broken record of taking the time to understand your current context and before you've made any major decisions. And that means understanding your data. It means bringing in the perspective of lots of different stakeholders, maybe people you wouldn't normally have in the room in a planning process. Those people have perspectives and have information that quite possibly nobody else has, especially in a large institution where things tend to get more compartmentalized. So I really think it's important to take that time and put the resources into a process to understand your own situation, understand what you've already got in the ground, and help identify what are your real needs. Where are the points that are key leverage points in your system that you can move the needle?
Yeah, to that, one of the big challenges for us, and I would imagine others, is that when you have such a small contingent of your math faculty who have ever really taught beyond the algebra curriculum, who really are not coming from an applied bent, a statistics bent, who feel also in many cases to an extent insecure about contextualized instruction. I've seen some neighboring institutions really just try to grab somebody and end up being like the ultra-traditional chalk and talk instructor who just could not make that transition, and then the initiative was deemed a failure. So talk to us a little bit about some ideas regarding training for faculty and that, because that seems like the largest piece in our planning stage?
So I know that both of us think deeply about the faculty training piece because, faculty are at the core of this work. So I think there's a couple of issues and that I think we share is, first of all, in our curricular materials for both the new Mathways project and Statway, Quantway, there is a lot of embedded support for instructors. So if you think about most college textbooks, it's all about the content. It's not about the teaching. As compared to K-12, where if you look at a K-12 textbook, there's a lot there that's about how you teach and suggestions and thinking about how to promote activities and good questions to ask and how to address, this key misunderstanding that pops up almost predictably every time you teach this topic. So that's one thing that we try to do in both of our projects is to embed that kind of support for instructors into the materials. So there's some support right there. If that's all they have, which is like the worst case scenario, I hope that never happens, but if that's all they had, at least they've got some suggestions about how to handle certain situations, things to think about, types of questions to ask. So then in our work, in addition to that, we do in-person training. And then one of the things that I'm most excited about is that we are developing online modules that are designed for use by departments. So I am not a big fan of people sitting in front of a computer with one-on-one with their computer and learning about active learning. Doesn't really seem to make sense to me. But we knew there was this need for to support local training and growth, professional growth. So we're developing online modules in which it's structured around the idea that a department is together, or 4 or 5 faculty members or something. And in the module, they might see some classroom video, or they might look at some student work, or they might listen to an interview with a student, and then they'd stop and have some discussion around that, and that it would be structured to support them locally to have a meaningful professional growth experience that then they can, and that also pushes them to then think, well, what would I do in my classroom? What are some next steps I can do? And sort of over a year, a department could offer their own professional development at the local level. Because the other thing that I really hate is the workshop mentality. And I get this a lot at the Dana Center, that people will call me up and said, hey, we're doing our QEP on active learning. Can you come and do a one-day workshop with us for our faculty? And I try to be nice but diplomatic, but what I really want to say is, well, how much money did you want to waste on that? And how much time did you want to waste on that? Because, I mean, we have lots of research, actually, Tony Brike's research from K-12 that tells us that is not effective at K-12. It does not help teachers make meaningful change to have a one-day workshop or even a 2-day workshop. That if you want to really change practice, you have to do it over time. And what a surprise, we know that's how students learn too. So it turns out we learn just like our students do. We need repetition, we need to come back, we need to have support over time. It is hard to change habits. We need practice. So we are trying to think deeply about how to instill some of that. It is one of our biggest challenges, and it's also where we need administrators to provide resources and recognize that this is something you can't just do it in a one-day workshop.
So this is where Mathways, the Dana Center, and Statway, Quantway, and Carnegie do differ. And I don't mean differ in being diametrically opposed, but it's a differ in terms of intensity. And so what we say to faculty, we get contacts all the time, and faculty say, could you just send us the curriculum and I just want to go do this? And like send me the textbook and I'm going to go out and do it. And we said no, because the materials that we have are inextricably tied to the pedagogy. And the pedagogy is not something that you can read in a day and then go out and do. In fact, for the StatWay, QuantWay, the ramp up is several months. And we're talking about, we just had a orientation in February for faculty that are going to ramp up to teach in the fall. We are looking at, well, what happens with the adjunct who gets the assignment 2 weeks before the class begins, and so do we have a version that can do something for them, sort of a triage, if you would, and then going through and giving them the supports as they teach the class. But we have Ann Edwards over here, who is our full-time director of advancing quality teaching. Obviously, you know, the advancement of teaching is our middle name. And so we really focus on that. And Ann, do you want to say a few words about some of the ideas of what we're looking at? It does include videos. It does include a lot of the work that we've built on from the TIM study, the Japanese lesson study work. It's built on a lot of the research. And the pedagogy is very different in the sense that our faculty, when they go through all of this and they start teaching, they say the hardest thing for them to do was to shut up.
Exactly what Amy describes. I mean, it has to be sustained, it has to be job embedded, it has to be done collaboratively, because social learning is the fundamental aspect of professional learning, like all learning. We don't do it localized at the college team level because we have this dispersed network. So what we try to do is we create social cohorts of new faculty that are led and facilitated by an experienced faculty mentor in our network, so a StatWay or a QuantWay person. And that activities that are grounded in an online program that includes a lot of the kind of video-based reflective inquiry through online tools kinds of activities, these experienced faculty then are the support system and facilitate their work through these online modules, and then also support them through regular phone calls, regular webinars, and face-to-face meetings. We this year are hoping to integrate into our program a regional meeting, kind of a model where new faculty at different regions in the country can get together and do a kind of lesson inquiry experience together, and that then gets reflected in the kind of online work that they do. We really believe really strongly that part of faculty development in our network is initiation and feeling of growth as a network member. So really it's not only developing your own capacities to be an effective pathways instructor, an effective mathematics instructor, it's also coming to realize that you're doing this in a network and that you have things to share and that you can learn from other people. And we provide a lot of resources and a lot of channels through which you can do that.
Let's say something about what do we do with adjuncts with the last minute assignment.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a humongous challenge. People come into our network, they get the course assignments anywhere from 10 months before they begin teaching to 7 days before they begin teaching. And so we have to develop a program that's really flexible and responsive. So the program is flexible in the sense that, as Bernadine mentioned, there's kind of like different levels. There's triage, so to speak. We call it the red, yellow, and green levels or something. But all that determines is sort of when you get what you need, and the level of support that you get, the intensity of the support that you get from your mentor. So if you get, if you're an adjunct or you're a full-time faculty member and you get assigned something 2 weeks before the course starts, you get really intensive support from your faculty mentor to make sure you're up to speed for the first 2 weeks of class. You know, we don't necessarily think at that point it's appropriate for you to get all the theory and all the empirical research that undergird, importantly, the work that you're going to be doing. There's time for that later once you begin teaching. Another really important thing is that we really think that the most learning happens when you are grappling with teaching yourself. It's not as if, like the one-shot workshop thing, it's sort of 40,000 feet and we tell you a bunch of stuff and it's not reflective in the work that you're doing every day. So it's really important that the kind of really deep and intensive support also happens while you're teaching, not just in the ramp up to teaching. So for those people who show up on our doorstep very late, they will also get that and probably heavier, often heavier kind of support while they're teaching as well.
It sounds like you're suggesting that colleges should create a mentor, leader, course director, lead teacher type individual that has ownership over this, and not just to say, okay, here's the course we're teaching, and here's the package you're going to do.
Well, we should go back though to why the professional development is so important. And part of it has to do with the curriculum structure. And so the curriculum structure is that students start out with a rich problem that's introduced to them. And then we actually want the faculty to encourage the students to grapple with that problem so they'll have deeper learning of the underlying concepts. So it's very different. Someone was talking about the chalk and talk kind of approach. So it's very different from that. And it's also very different from here's an idea, here's the concept, here's how you solve it, and here's the formula, and here's the answer, and now here's another problem now to it's really having the students understand and grapple with what is the problem, what are the underlying concepts, talking among each other, because we have lots of evidence that this is really for deeper learning than the memorization kind of attitude. And so doing that, then that is coupled with the pedagogy that is needed to support.
So I think, though, the issue of an on-site mentor leader, we have people in the way we've organized our network. There are faculty facilitators at each college who sort of take on some of those roles. But I think having an experienced faculty mentor who's been in the network, who may not be at your college and probably is not at your college, is a very valuable thing. Being able to interact with folks who have a lot of experience and gone through the same learning that you have had yourself, or you're going through yourself, is extremely valuable. And doing so in a cohort with other new faculty who may be struggling with those same things is also very helpful. Another thing to note is that the cohorts of new faculty that a faculty mentor have include both people who are ramping up to teaching and people who are in their first year. And so there are different kinds of voices that are in these conversations that the faculty mentor supports together. And so that enriches those conversations as well. I think the model of having a college team is a really important one as well. And I think many of our colleges also have that, that have grown up organically, that they have their own support systems within their colleges, in particular those colleges have been around for a couple of years. I think that's invaluable. We just, by dint of the way we're organized, have done it this way.
Yes.
So, well, I guess my question, both of your organizations have similar goals and aspires. Both your organizations have similar goals. You have slightly different dissemination models, and so I guess maybe you could think forward 5 years, 10 years. Imagine things went well. How does your kind of vision for kind of this math? How is that spread? How does it go from college to college? Does that make sense?
So I'll take a hack at it and maybe can mop up. One thing that we're thinking about, and yeah, that's right, a lot of messes that I make. So the way that we're organizing the work in Texas is different in that it's really a statewide approach. And we have partnered with the Texas Association of Community Colleges, which that's the presidents and chancellors of all 50 community college districts in the state. And they voted unanimously in 2012 to join us in this work, and not only join us in terms of participation, but that they would actually increase their associational dues to support the work. And that partnership is not just a 1 or 2 year piece of work, it's a 10-year commitment that we've made, because it reflects an understanding that this is not something that changes overnight in terms of working with four-year institutions, aligning policy. All of these things are going to take time. And so we're working in a way that brings all 50 community college districts in the state into the project, but we're giving them 3 roles to participate, and they kind of increase in levels of engagement. So the first group of colleges is working most intensively, 9 colleges, and they're co-development partners, so they're helping us in this first year actually provide active feedback and test materials and helping us improve both the curricular materials and also the professional learning opportunities, tools, and resources. And there's a group of institutions called Active Learning Sites. These institutions are in a mentee role, partnered with co-development partners, and they're coming on in terms of implementation in this fall or the next fall. And then the remaining colleges are what we call capacity building sites. These are institutions that need a little more time. They're coming in year 3 or 4, and they're committing to having faculty learning opportunities on their campuses now to begin sort of growing the understanding of the problem. What do pathways look like, and building engagement in that way. So when I look ahead, I think we want to continue to look at a statewide implementation strategy. Some of the benefits of this work are that we're able to take a coordinated call to universities around the state. We're able to kind of collectively navigate some of the policy issues. We can work directly with the coordinating board on behalf of all of the community colleges in a system. So we think that the kind of brings strength in numbers, both in terms of the community college network, but sort of peer pressure that we can also exert on four-year institutions as well, and either in the legislature or more informally in sort of rulemaking activities. So we would like to see additional states come on, but we do think that we don't have a number in mind exactly about where this is going, but we do know many states are interested, and we think that this has been an effective strategy for our scale.
So I would like to address that question more generally. Generally talked about some of our specifics of our strategies around scaling the new Mathways project, but I want to step back and talk about what I hope we see in 5 years around this more general Pathways model. I feel like I'm trying to think of the right analogy and it's not coming to me, so just bear with me. But one of the things that I think is so exciting is the momentum behind this from so many different organizations and groups that represent different stakeholders and work at different levels of the system. So when I look 5 or 10 years down the road, I think we will have seen, first of all, some organizations like the Dana Center, the Carnegie Foundation, also like Complete College America, Jobs for the Future, that are really helping push the state level and national level conversation around this. And that's that policy work. That's the big picture, setting the vision. And then there's the going down through the system, the work with the training the faculty, the work with advising that that specifically more our organizations are able to do, as like Complete College America and Jobs for the Future really are specifically policy, but also programs like the California Acceleration Project and some of these other strategies that are being developed that can help address some of the logistics and the implementation issues and supporting all of those faculty, hopefully seeing also continued support from the mathematical associations around, and also seeing them take a real role with leadership with the faculty and the training. This is bigger than any of us. This is bigger than the Dana Center. It's bigger than the Carnegie Foundation. We need all of those partners. I also see that we're starting to see glimmers in like the publishing world. The for-profit world is interested in this. They're starting to come out with textbooks and materials. Now, some people think that that's a competition to us. That is the best sign ever, because when I talked earlier about this concept of making things the normative practice. It will become the normative practice when people out there start thinking they can make money off of it, frankly. That's a good sign that they see this as this is where the future lies. So I hope 5 years down the road, a college that is working, has a differentiated mathematics pathways approach, has a lot of curricular options, a lot of good curricular options. Like they're trying to choose which is the best out of 3 great options. That would be awesome. That they would be seeing, there's a lot of ways to train my faculty. That they would be seeing lots of places for support. So sometimes people assume that this is about who gets the most colleges or with their name on it. And that's not what it's about at all. It's how many students in 5 years will be successful and taking mathematics that matters to them. And I just almost tear up at that idea, because as a math teacher, it makes me so sad every time I see somebody just struggling with math, working so hard, and it's never gonna help them. And I know that. So that in 5 years, that's what I want, and I want it to be, I think that it will happen because many organizations, many businesses, many colleges, many faculty will all start contributing their ideas and their solutions and their strategies, and there will be many options.
So our strategy is different. I call it strategy scaling by infiltration. And what I mean by that is we started out with 30 colleges and universities. We have 50 colleges and universities in 14 states right now. And what we're doing is, this is faculty from these 50 institutions, common curriculum, common pedagogy, common assessment. If you think about that, that's huge in terms of these faculty members from all different parts of the country agreeing to this. The reason we're looking at it this way is, we are about the advancement of teaching. So we need to find out what are the factors that are critical to really engage students in learning, and what better group to start with than in the developmental math arena. We can solve the problem there. We think we can solve it in a lot of other arenas. So that's the goal that we're looking at. So the reason the common everything is it going to work in Florida? Is it going to work in Ohio? Is it going to work in California? Is it going to work in Washington? Is it going to work in a university? Is it going to work in a small school, a large school? Is it going to work in a private school, et cetera? And what we're looking for is, because the students and the student issues are pretty much similar. So how do we go about finding what are the common principles in the pedagogy and the practice, the common curriculum designs, the common kinds of assessments that really will, if you would, move the needle. So that's what we've been looking at. So now that we're in these various states, and this is where the infiltration comes in, so that, for example, we're in the CUNY schools, so we were in 1, and now we're in 3, and we're going to get to all 7 by probably next year. So we're kind of scaling, inward out as opposed to outward in. And we don't know this is the better way, but this is the way that we've chosen to do it, as it were. And also we also have, as Ann alluded to, so then this is a network across the country, so that we can look at, well, what's working and what kinds of things work across the country. Because if we're looking at scaling and moving the needle nationally, that's the approach that we are taking. The other thing I would just say is that what we found so far is looking at, all the students are taking a common assessment. They took a common math background survey on the first day of class. What we're finding is the students in different states, at different colleges, in different demographic areas, they're not looking all that different. And so when we have colleges will say, well, my students are different than your students, we're saying, well, you know what? They're really not all that different. Now, there's a lot of difference and variability among faculty, which you would expect. And so to what extent can we work with the faculty to come up with the common pedagogy that will be the most effective, so we're not all spinning our wheels? That doesn't mean you all have to do everything exactly the same. It doesn't mean that at all. But it's to give you the tools that we are finding from a whole large group of faculty that we know are working effective for a whole large group of students, and then we're trying to go forward in that direction.
I know we are on the cusp of going overtime, but I would be remiss in a policy session if I didn't mention a few policy updates related to this. And a question didn't come up, so I didn't have an opportunity to jump on it. But I did want to tell you that I liked Bernadine's comment about Connecticut and Florida, and don't freak out. I think that there are places where the legislature has been very active in coming into sort of the sacred ground of curricular issues. So that's kind of one example of where states are going. But in many cases, it may spur an opportunity to be doing things like pathways. So I think that there are strategies to deal with some of those kind of legislative policies. In Michigan, they've just updated their transfer module, and they're including 3 different math pathways at the gateway level that are guaranteed for transfer. So guess what? It sounds a lot like what we're talking about. So it's a statistics, a quantitative reasoning, and a STEM pathway. In Ohio and Georgia, they've said, we don't want to see a Florida or Connecticut come our way. We want our faculty to be making recommendations and getting ahead of the game. So we want to be showing that we're proactive about our developmental approaches. And they've brought together faculty committees to work with their Board of Regents to develop a faculty-driven set of policy recommendations around how they think they can dramatically improve their success in early collegiate mathematics. It's a really interesting example, and would be happy to talk to you about that if you're interested. And then in Kentucky and Colorado, they've started to look into differentiated placement for a STEM pathway and a non-STEM pathway, and so that it enables this discussion around not everybody maybe needs intermediate algebra, depending on what path you're going into. So these are models, if you're looking for examples, these states are kind of leading the way.
Since we are at the end, I just want to mention that we do have some handouts up front that about some of the resources we have available to support implementation, and some description, an article about how we see this as systemic reform within an institution.
Is your data there that we can use? There's data at the website that we could use then?
It's not updated yet, but actually, our website is not updated with our data, but I have a handout that I could give you.
I would just leave you with the name of an article. You can find it online. And if you want to leave your email, we could send it to you. If you want to do anything differently, the first challenge you're probably going to have is your fellow faculty members who don't want to change. Because there's rigor in intermediate algebra. It's determinant of college readiness, regardless of whether or not the student's going to go into math or engineering or whatever else. So that's probably the first group you want to be talking to. I'm assuming those are not in the room right now. But that's the first group you need to talk to. And in talking to them, let me just tell you a little bit of what happened. When we first started, Uri and I went to the various math associations to get, for Statway in particular, to get the math associations, if you would, endorsement of the learning outcomes. They helped us determine them, but we wanted a letter to say, we are in support of these outcomes and the program, et cetera, et cetera. So we got all of them. We got AMS, we got certainly AMATIC, we got ASA, we got CAUSE, et cetera. The one we didn't get, we went there and they turned us down, was AMS. And so that was when we thought, well, maybe when we get some data, we'll go back to AMS. And if you don't know, AMS is probably the most conservative, the most university-oriented of the math societies. So as of, I think it's last month, the former president of AMS, the former president of MAA, and then the former president of BMSA, which is Board of Mathematical Sciences and Application, did a paper. And the paper is called Meeting the Challenges of Improved Post-Secondary Education in the Mathematical Sciences. Meeting the Challenges of Improved Post-Secondary Education in the Mathematical Sciences. And in that paper, it says, while the traditional math education has been important, that it's really time to look at pathways and alternative pathways for students, because not all of them are going to be engineers or mathematicians. And specifically, Statway and Mathway are mentioned as examples of some of these alternative pathways. I bring this to your attention because you could bring this paper to
your colleagues who might not be as willing to see that things are changing. But believe me, this paper, this publication is gigantic in moving the field of the mathematicians, the professional societies, and what they're seeing as, yes, there should be alternative pathways to math education.
And I think we will close with that, and thank you all very much. And it's fair to say you'll be around if people have additional questions for you individually. Thank you all very much.